Good morning, all. We'll begin in just a minute here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome and thank you all for being here for today's Ohio Travel Association's Reopening Guidelines Review with Ohio's Travel Businesses. I'm going to turn things over to Jim Mahone, Ohio Travel Association President and VP of Marketing and Brand Management at Akron Summit CBD. Jim?
Thank you, Kelly. And thank you everyone for joining what is going to be a very important and information-packed webinar. You know, now more than ever, the work that the Ohio Travel Association is doing on behalf of all of the members as well as non-members is, you know, wildly critical and vital for our future success as we kind of navigate all of this together. So again, I can't thank enough Melinda Huntley, our Executive Director, Janet Johnson, our Deputy Director, and Kelly Florian, our Communications Manager, for the incredible amount of work they have been doing to help curate all of this information and put it in a format that we can understand and have actionable items. So without further ado, Melinda, thank you so much.
Oops. Thanks, Jim. And already I've screwed up and forgot to put your welcome sign. So anyway, welcome everybody. We are so happy you are here. For those that joined us on Friday, we've had a lot of things happening since our last webinar. As Jim said, you know, earlier, the Ohio Travel Association, I just kind of want to create the right stage so you understand who we are. We are not the state agency. We are a nonprofit that is supported by the tourism industry. And so we are led by you. We're led by those that you have elected to serve in this position, including Jim as our president. And we want to thank all members of our board for their efforts during this time. Our webinar, or our mission statement is here. Together we inspire, champion, empower the advancement of the industry. And at no time have we been able to put that mission statement into work as much as we have in the last 2 or 3 months. So I'm going to jump right into this and go over what we know. So reopening on June 10th, which is so exciting, right? That is tomorrow. All of these businesses are available they're allowed to open according to an announcement that was made last week by Governor Mike DeWine. On Friday then, the announcement was made that on June 19th, amusement parks, water parks, outdoor theaters, casinos, and racinos may reopen if they submit a plan to the governor's office before opening. So this is a little different. You can see the previous reopenings, you weren't required to submit a plan. Now, you should have a plan in place. We're going to talk about that. These new openings that came up on Friday, the governor's office is requesting a copy of the plan. We have been working with the governor's office to, you know, kind of figure out what does that mean? Who do we submit it to? What is the process there? And we haven't gotten any direction on that yet. They're still working on that. So we will let you know as soon as we know, because you will see this last bullet is the Memorial Golf Tournament. And here is one event. This was a golf tournament, professional golf tournament. and the governor announced that they were okay to go ahead and hold this tournament because they had created such a thorough plan. My question then back to the governor's office is, so what are the parameters on why just that tournament opened? Does that mean other golf tournaments could open? Does that mean other tournaments could open, period? Does that mean other events could open? So you can see that it's a little confusing yet. So what I've asked for clarification from the governor's office is, all right, who do you want plans from? How are they submitted? And what are the definitions of the businesses that can reopen if they submit plans? And we'll talk about this in a second. Not yet open auditoriums, stadiums, arenas. There is a large venue task force, kind of a mass gathering task force that's been working. And so we've yet to hear when some of these bigger entities could open. Performance theaters, concerts, and music halls are also not permitted to open as of yet. Drive-in theaters are permitted, and we were able to get outdoor theaters permitted to open in Friday's announcement. So again, we made the case. These are outdoors. These aren't the same as indoor performance theaters. Can we have outdoor performances? And they agreed, opened up on June 19th. We also want some clarification for, the parades, fairs, festivals, carnivals, events of those sort. The problem is that we have all different business types, all different types of experiences. Putting all of them into one definition, it's just really difficult to navigate. So, our hope is that we're going to get some clarification on these, and then we'll be able to submit plans for introducing these again. County fairs, the governor's already said that they may open. So if county fairs may open, then we feel that these others should be given the opportunity to as well. If you are not sure if you should open, again, because of the definition, who you are, first of all, first step, make sure you have a written plan. And we're going to go over what that plan should consist of. Work with your local health department. At the end of the day, the local health department has the ability and the authorization to, say your plan's not good enough or you shouldn't be opening. So if you aren't sure, work with your local health department. Make them part of the process so they're comfortable with your reopening strategy. If they say no and you really believe you should open based on your category of business and others, please contact me. Once again, it's just because our businesses are so varied and our experiences are so unique. I've said it before, if we were all the same, then what would travel be, right? What would these tourism experiences be? We are who we are because we're offering different experiences. That just makes this process a little more difficult. Among the many requests we have currently active to the governor's office, one of them that we put into place, we started working on was, all right, you're allowing wedding receptions for up to 300. So can't we have any venue have meetings or banquets or whatever it could be of up to 300 persons? There was a public health order issued yesterday that clarifies this and allows it to happen. I should have noted before, we're going to send you a PDF of this document and these links will be live. So I've put them in and they look, kind of wonky on a webinar, but when you get the PDF, you'll be able to link directly to this order, which outlines what will be required. And we're going to cover that in a little more. But, so yes, we were able to get this clarification, which we're very, very happy about. Businesses with amusement rides, this was one of the other questions that we had on Thursday. As far as I'm concerned, it's permitted with reopenings June 19th because those are going to be permitted. The amusement parks are open on June 19th. Some of the amusement rides at other businesses should also be able to open. And again, the biggest if right now currently is what's the plan for festivals and events? How do we get permission to open? What are the guidelines? So that's one of the most pressing issues we're trying to work with the governor's office right now, as well as continued focus on, we don't want them to forget, we have others out there, others of our peers who are still not open. The process for the updates, the guidelines and everything, this is controlled by Governor Mike DeWine. It's a very small group. Even the task force that were designated gave guidelines, but they weren't contributing, these are the recommended dates for opening. The governor has control of those dates and almost entirely. So it is more of working with his office and ensuring we get those reopening dates. This is of most concern to those folks who are not yet open. There was a new public health order that expired the end of May that was reissued, I believe, like May 31st, that extended it till July 1. And it basically lists all the businesses that are to remain closed. Some of the media interpreted this as, no, people can't open until July 1. That's not the case, because as we have seen just last week, the reopening dates started occurring. So if you aren't open yet and someone says you're not allowed to open until July 1, according to this order, that's simply not true, because the governor can allow certain reopening dates prior to July 1. The other thing you need to be aware of, and I've even been in contact with the governor's office even yet this morning, try to get clarification, try to get a timeline, is that there will be a public health order issued about the reopening of the entertainment businesses and all those announcements he made last week. To date, and I just checked it, I'm going to check it again right now, that has not been issued. You guys need to be very aware that when that public health order is issued, read it. OTA will be on it. The governor's office texted me this morning. She said she's trying to find out what time that'll be released, when it will be released. She knows we're on the call today, was hoping even to text me back and get me clarification of when we can expect that. But there may be things in that order that we need to be aware of. Now, I don't think that means you can't open, because the guidelines that are presented should be incorporated in that order, but we want to make doubly certain that nothing else has been added in that public health order that we haven't seen yet. So as soon as that health order is issued, we will send out an email, we will post on social media, and we will make sure you guys have access to it. And you can also go to this link yourself and join us in refreshing and trying to find this as soon as it's released. Our messaging for the businesses continuous that have not been reopened or that were just reopened has been, look, our businesses have to have the same opportunity granted to other businesses in Ohio to operate and manage their businesses. We can control our capacity, we can control our flow way more effectively than many of the businesses that are open right now. A lot of our businesses are frequent by groups of family and friends. It's not necessarily the purpose of many of our businesses to commingle. And our businesses are ready, and that you guys have plans in place and you're ready to open the doors. And that has been our message throughout this process. All right, so going over the requirements, and I'm going to reiterate what Kelly, I'm not sure if she said earlier, but if you have any questions, throw them into our chat or our Q&A on the Zoom. We have some questions that were pre-submitted, we have posted, and we'll go over at the end. But if you have any questions, even right now, don't hesitate to throw them into the Q&A or chat function. All right, so understand there are 5 basic protocols for all businesses in Ohio, and this was established early on. These are the 5 things that we need to address in our plans and in our businesses in order to open. 1, face coverings are required for employees and recommended for customers. 2, daily health assessments, and we're going to talk about each one of these in detail. But daily health assessments, which could be self-evaluations. 3, the good hygiene, the hand washing. 4, cleaning and sanitizing workspaces. And 5, and the reason it's bigger is because it appears to be the most important, and it's highlighted throughout the guidelines, is this social distancing of 6 feet or more. Notice in this, at the time this was released, the governor had said establish maximum capacity at 50% of fire code. That is not the case for the entertainment businesses and those businesses that were given the opportunity to reopen. It is what you establish your own capacity based on what you need to do to enable effective social distancing. So there are guidelines. Here's just a few. This is what they look like. They are all on the Ohio coronavirus page under Responsible Restart. And we have a link to these coming up. What you need to do is think modular. We all have general business environments, right? So look at those guidelines for how to operate your business area. If you have a gift shop, look at the retail. Of course, now that's been expanded to also include entertainment, but there are specific things related to retail. Restaurants and bars, if you have food service. There's also, many other guidelines available. Be aware, though, these guidelines aren't always consistent between one another. For instance, buffets are not permitted in manufacturing, in general office environment. By the time we got to restaurants, which was a couple weeks later, they are permitted as long as you have a server. So what I suggest is you go with the guidelines that are on here that are the most lenient, also the most specific to what you're doing. So food service, look at that with those restaurant guidelines. These are the guidelines that are currently available. This link right here will be active, so you can go straight to that page. The entertainment sector, the museums, everything like that, they're located in this big old set of guidelines called Consumer, Retail, Services, and Entertainment. And recognize they are not specific to many of our business types. As we suspected and said a couple months ago in a webinar, we found, we suspected it was going to be really impossible to drill down and be very, very specific, just because all of our experiences are so different from one another. But you can see these are the different guidelines that have been established. Also, I want to bring to notice the fact that they have now posted the submitted plan for the Memorial Golf Tournament. So obviously the Memorial Golf Tournament submitted a plan to the governor. The governor liked it enough that he put it on the list of guidelines. So I would suggest all of you who are still working on a plan, take a look at that because it may give you some guidance as far as, I don't think you have to go in as detail. Obviously, it's a pretty complex tournament, but it gives you an idea of what one business did in order to be reopened. There are also sector-specific safety guidelines out there. I've put the link of where you can find these on our website. So one of the ones that's just really great is IAPA. So take a look at this if you haven't already. IAPA has considerations for the attractions industry that covers all of these different types of operational functions within our attractions. And it's really well done, but it may give you some information that could be useful. I like to say the number one reason you have to remember, the number one reason why you're creating a plan is not necessarily to open your doors. The number one reason is to keep your employees and your customers, your guests, your suppliers as safe as possible. If you put that and consider that as your goal, like your goal is to, create as safe an environment as you can, you're going to meet the guidelines established by the state and beyond. There's a couple reasons why that's important, not only because, hey, we've always put the guests and well-being of our guests, as a high priority. We need to continue to do that, but our potential visitors are also really nervous. And so this is a study that went out, and this I thought this was very interesting about what's making people nervous about visiting some of our attractions. Social distancing, right? Number one. Number two is other guests are not social distancing, which I thought was a very interesting one. So, they are concerned about the people they're going to encounter at your place of business. So the more you can control the flow and ease their mind about this, the better. So the point is that our customers are demanding that we change the way we do business, that we're going to open our doors not looking the same as we did before, and they expect that. What would make our visitors feel safe and comfortable going to a museum, aquarium, theater, zoo, or concert again? This was as of May 18th. Aside from the availability of a vaccine, the second most important reason is seeing other people visit. This is really important. So when we talk about how you reopen, think about your social media around that, and the importance of making sure people see other people visiting. We had a discussion about influencers. We're going to have another discussion in a webinar, I believe, next week. They're like, look, today, right now, your influencers are people's family members and friends. So they want to see people enjoying your space. They'll feel more comfortable when they see other people there. Just keep that in mind as you go on. And again, I'm not going to go over all of these, but you'll have a copy of this in the PDF. All right, so getting specific into the requirements for employees. What is required is, again, the social distancing, 6 feet between employees if possible. If it's not possible to maintain that 6 foot distance, install a barrier. And that a barrier, people have been very creative in what that barrier may look like. But you will see the social distancing is in bold because it is bolded in every single guideline issued by the governor's office. So the whole social distancing thing is been prioritized. You have got to allow anyone who comes into your business to wear a facial covering. Allow them to, right? So you may say, oh, we're not going to mandate that our guests wear facial coverings, but you've got to allow people who want to wear their facial coverings to do so. There are some exclusions for facial coverings. These are the exclusions listed right here. So all employees must wear facial coverings except if they can name one of these reasons. If they have one of those reasons, you have got to provide a written justification, have it on hand. You don't have to submit it to your health department, but if they request it, you need to have verification of why an employee is not wearing a facial covering. One of the things I'm suggesting is if you are going to have an employee who's on the front line, who's at the ticket counter, or who's, front facing, you may want to make those people the ones who can wear facial coverings, especially if you're going to request or recommend your guests wear facial coverings. To have an employee out there who may be excluded from wearing them for one of these reasons is just kind of asking for more trouble. So you may want to reassign someone who's not wearing a facial covering to another position, not only for their health and safety, but for the optics. Throughout these guidelines, I have this little guy listening because we have picked up information as we've held discussions with attractions. We've also been listening to what's happening elsewhere in the country. What are some best practices? What are people doing? So for all of the requirements, we have this little blue box that kind of gives us some ideas. Like, you can set your own policies on whether or not to require your guests to wear face coverings. That's the most important thing. And, you know, how are you going to handle exclusions? How are you going to handle it for your guests as well? So this is a concern, particularly if you're going to mandate guests or mandate facial coverings for guests. What are you going to do if someone comes up and says, I have health issues, I can't wear it? And how are your other guests going to feel, right? So somehow address that either in signage or policies about how you're going to handle that situation. Also required for require employees to stay home if symptomatic. That means you need to have some communication going out to the employees. These are the symptoms. This is the policy. If you are experiencing these symptoms, here's what you need to do to contact us and stay at home. Require regular hand washing, hand sanitizers in high locations. And from the employee standpoint, the requirement is clean, high touch items after each use. Now, this may seem like really, really hard, but what we're seeing businesses do is providing sanitizing wipes to their employees. So if you're using the copying machine, wipe it down afterwards, right? Or if you're, you know, going in and out of a certain door, wipe it down afterwards. So, you know, put some of the onus back on the employees to do that cleaning as they go. Again, you are not required to take temperatures. You could have a self-evaluation. You could require employees to check in every morning saying, yep, I checked my temperature, I was okay, whatever that would be. So it could either be self-evaluation or you could take it one step further. It's really all over the board with what businesses are doing to address that. The only recommended guideline for employees is group employees by shift to reduce exposure. That is the only recommended. And understand these guidelines are lumped in with consumer, retail, and services. So it's a pretty broad grouping of businesses. All right, so what about customers and guests? Well, required, again, 6 feet between customers when possible. If you can't maintain that 6 feet distance, then add barriers. Specify hours for at-risk populations as appropriate. It's not always going to be possible in some of our businesses, but you know, and I think that's how that, you know, as appropriate comes into play here. Place hand sanitizer in high contact locations. Ask customers and guests not to enter if symptomatic. This could be signage. It could be online if you're doing online ticketing, which we advise. Stagger the entry. And entertainment businesses that offer sports activities and sport leagues must follow guidance for the general contact, non-contact sports. Again, we've talked about the guidelines, all the different ones that are available. Understand if you have a business that, you know, may have a tennis court, you're going to be asked to comply with those guidelines as well. Recommended guidelines for customers and guests is consider having customers wear face coverings, do a health questionnaire, provide facial coverings upon entry where possible, accept customers by appointment only. And these last 2 are more related to retail, but increase availability for curbside pickup and consider suspending return policies. If I want to talk about this, if requiring guests to wear face coverings, and there are lots of businesses right now who, what we're hearing from the entertainment sector, we have quite a few that are requiring facial coverings. I know Toledo Museum of Art is requiring facial coverings. Cedar Point just announced they are. You need to create policies for what to do with non-compliance. The reality is there are going to be people who are not going to want to do it. So what are you going to do if someone's adamant? What are you going to do if someone says, oh, well, I'm not, coming in? And I really suggest consider conflict resolution training for your frontline staff. Don't just stick your frontline people out there, particularly at an entry point where these issues may come up, and expect them to know how to handle it. In fact, I would even identify some people who are really good at conflict resolution and reassign them to positions for a while where those questions may occur. One of the things we picked up just a couple days ago, which I thought was a really nice wording. If you're not going to require facial coverings by your guests, but you're going to recommend it, instead of saying facial coverings recommended, consider saying facial coverings appreciated. I thought that was just a really nice way of doing it. So the third, so we covered employees, we covered guests. The third would be physical places and what is required for the physical plant. Again, 6-foot distancing, social distancing, post signage, disinfect, high contact surfaces, hourly, retail oriented, but clean merchandise before stocking, establish maximum capacity. Again, not dictated by fire code or by any given number, but what you have to do as a business to maintain that 6-foot distancing. What are you comfortable with? And you may want to start with a lesser amount to get used to it, and from an operational standpoint, are able to slowly increase that. Discontinue self-service, food stations, product samples. Think about what that statement says to a museum or to an attraction. Food courts, food service operations, all must follow the guidelines for restaurants. Recommended guidelines for physical places: close once a week for deep cleaning, maximize available, they say checkout space. I'm gonna ask you to think about that in terms of ticketing space, right, or entry space, to promote social distancing, using contactless payment where possible. And again, some of the things we heard from other businesses, creative ways. One of the things they're recommending is keeping a supply of products on hand. You know how scarce things sometimes can be. So if you find a source, get ready. I thought this was really clever. One attraction is renting hand washing stations from a local construction company. So maybe you have a local construction company who may even help you out, given the challenges. But they have these portable hand washing stations. It may be worth reaching out to see if some local businesses can help you with that, instead of having to put something permanent into place. The other recommendation is make sure you're assigning cleaning responsibility to everyone. In the past, maybe, yes, you had maintenance and housekeeping, and I know from my days at Cedar Point, even as a full-time person, we were always told, if you see trash, you have to pick it up. Like, it doesn't matter, who you were, you need to pick up that trash. Well, now we're going to take it one step further. And it's the fact that, every person has a responsibility for ensuring that the location is clean. Some other things that we've heard that people are doing: timed entry, converting traffic to one way, if that's a better way to manage social distancing. So there may be some areas of your business or attraction that it might be easier if you just kind of reassign that traffic flow. No switchback queues. If you don't have room for straight lines, though, like, okay, switchback queues normally were straight lines, but that doesn't mean you can't be creative. So could it be winding as long as you keep that 6-foot distance? And so these are just some of the other things that people had recommended. Oh, I love the second to last one. We know this is happening. I believe the Columbus Zoo where they have this big map of the zoo, and instead of handing out paper maps, they have a sign, and they've put the map very prominent and said, snap a picture of this map with your phone to use throughout the day. So that's just a really simple way. They've eliminated the possibility of touch by just creating the opportunity for folks to capture that image on their own. And the last segment for the guidelines is what to do with confirmed cases. This is consistent between every sector that's been opened, what is required for you to do as a business, and what is recommended. This is a site to an exchange created by Ohio manufacturers, where you might be able to find, they have everything from floor signs to barriers, all kinds of different safety and signage information. It's primarily geared towards the healthcare sector, but there's a lot of goods here that I think that our businesses can use as well. And when you go to this site, go to the section that says Other, because the section that says Other provides really a whole slew of different products that you might want to consider. All right, so what do you do when you create a plan? Each plan is going to be unique because, again, each of our businesses is unique. Each of our experiences are unique. Each of our physical plants are unique. So we recommend kind of role-playing through that customer experience. And for every interaction with a surface or another person, can you eliminate that interaction completely? Or how can you clean between the touches? It's going to involve a lot of training. Understanding that this is all new. Your employees are going through the same feelings that you are. Training's going to be vital. Understand your plan will need to be changed. What we've heard from others that have opened already elsewhere in the country is that, the plan changes almost daily. So be flexible. Be kind on yourself, right? Like understand that, okay, we're going to put this in place, but if we have to tweak it later, we can tweak it. Seek input from your employees before opening. This is a really great resource. They're the ones that are going to have to do these things. Get their input, get their suggestions. They might come up with some really clever ideas. I also advise, as you open, seek feedback from your guests. We have heard other attractions outside Ohio doing exit surveys. Did you feel safe? Was there something we could have done better? What recommendation? Look, people know that we're going to have to do these things. They know what we're going to be required to do, and a lot of them have opinions about it. So use the opportunity in the early weeks to really get feedback from your guests, or we might miss some valuable information. Think about working with nearby attractions for a cohesive guest experience. So if you know that they visit your attraction and another attraction down the street on a regular basis, is one requiring facial coverings and one not? Is there a way to work together on streamlining that customer experience so the customer knows what to expect? And can you brand your plan? So Hilton has done this with Lysol. Now that's a big budget, operation. Yes, I get it. But think about it, in terms of when Hilton branded with Lysol, they kind of created this, slogan and icons, so they don't have to give the whole laundry list of what guests are expected to do. They're able to put an icon. They're able to put something as a reminder. At the end of the day, and I'm going to talk about this, at the end of the day, we can't forget what business we're in. We're in the hospitality business. And so, can you brand your plan so that gentle reminders throughout your experience can work? The other thing related to branding your plan that I wanted to bring up, I don't think I mentioned this elsewhere, but consider the messages you're sending. So we heard from an attraction just last week, they were using kind of a generic hand sanitizer at their ticket office. And what message does that send? And so you may even want to consider what brand of hand sanitizer you're using. What message are you sending to guests? And so I thought that was just a really interesting thing that occurred. And consider dry running with board members or other groups, which we're going to talk about. They want to see you in action. This is not about streamlining the experience so they don't see you cleaning. That's not what your customers are going to want. From everything we're hearing, at least at the start, you need to bring the back of the house to the front of the house. They want to see changes. They want to see you cleaning. They want to see you actively doing what you said you were going to do, and that is to create a safer environment. And can you make cleaning fun, consistent with your brand? Again, we're in the experience industry. There was one amusement park elsewhere that is bringing in like Monsters, Inc. as a cleaning crew. So they're actually theming, right, the cleaning process that's consistent with their brand. So don't forget your brand in this whole process. Also, don't forget that your guests will know exactly what is required of you. They all know what's going to be required of businesses. So they're going to be looking to see that you have those things in place. One recommendation I would make is to assign someone in your business to be in charge of handling comments, questions, or complaints. The last thing you want to happen is for a guest to contact the local health department and complain because your bathrooms were messy. Well, they didn't know that maybe a family of 5 had just walked in. You know how that happens. So if you have a sign saying, how are we doing? We want to hear from you, with a phone number, you're able to address some of those complaints initially. Don't forget, reduced capacity provides an opportunity for unique experiences. This is huge. We're going to talk about this more and more in the future. But you know, I think we've looked at this as regulations, and yes, it's hard. I get it. Our profit margins are strapped. I get it. It's not like we all like this. But these are the cards we've been given. So how do we leverage reduced capacity to provide more intimate experiences and unique experiences? Maybe it's not the experience they had before COVID, but it could be something really great even after. Not every building experience needs to open at the start. Not every exhibit needs to start at once. Consider building upon or adding outdoor experiences just because that you can more easily control some of the social distancing, and focus on your value proposition today, not on what it used to be. Again, it goes back to, you know, how can you take a look at new opportunities based on the limited capacity? What can you do different? You could even provide, you know, enhanced experiences because of this. Let's talk just slightly about pricing. I am happy to talk to someone about this later. So there's lots of opinions out there. And the important thing to remember about pricing is to be flexible. There are studies out there that are showing customers expect to pay the same amount, if not a little more. Understand it's easier to lower pricing later than it's going to be to raise it if you lower your price too much. So you may want to consider keeping the price the same, but maybe stockpile promotions that are ready to go just in case the market is reacting. Another series out there, another thought is lower the price based on a changed experience. Again, I'm not so sure that some of our experiences aren't possibly enhanced by the limited capacity. So don't be quick to jump on lowering your price. Again, based on what used to be versus on what it is today. Some are lowering the price based on understanding the community is hurting also. This actually came from a zoo, but understand zoos are also funded by tax levies and have to have that local appeal and local support. So it's a little different. What I suggest is consider dynamic pricing based on the behaviors you want to encourage. So maybe you offer a lower price for those purchasing tickets online because you want them to purchase online, or you want them to make a reservation. You know, that way you're incentivizing that behavior by giving a lower price. Maybe it's about a lower price for early entry or an off-peak day. Given that most of us will have timed entries and limited numbers of people who can come in a given hour, we're now operating a lot like hotels, so that when, you know, a hotel doesn't sell a room, that's lost inventory. when you don't sell that ticket that first hour of the day, it's not like you can make it up later because you can't increase the capacity at a later time. So how can you incentivize early pricing, early entry, which also then goes back to offering a lower price for those audiences that may need that. Consider bundling and VIP experiences. So can you offer something a little extra? Maybe you keep, if you want to try keeping the price the same, but you also are giving maybe some portion to relief fund. Just 3 things to consider when setting prices that you may want to go over. Your VIPs are your employees and their families. Remember how I said that people want to see people visiting? So consider a day for employees and their families and take photographs and get that out there on social media that people are visiting. Your first guests are likely to be your most loyal ones, donors, members, pass holders, those who have been there before. You may want to seek their feedback, right? Those are going to be the most important ones, just seeking feedback, and consider doing even a soft opening with those folks. I've seen a number of attractions in Ohio planning to do that. Your local audience, and maybe even possibly your first responders. I had heard Kelly Bowles from, she was with New Orleans at the time of Katrina, and she said, the first people back to New Orleans, it wasn't about getting out of the house. It was going back to where memories were made and wanting to start making memories again. And I think this is really important. Yes, there's going to be a lot of people wanting to get out of the house, but it's a much deeper reason why people are going to want to get back, and not being, we need to be aware of this and need to be able to provide those experiences so those memories can be made. Don't lead with your safety measures, right? Like, you still have to get them to your door. You still have to consider the travel buying cycle. How do you inspire them? How do you, come to the forefront when they're researching? How do you get them to book or get them to make a reservation? The fact that you have these safety standards, everybody has these safety standards and are going to need to have them in place. So you don't want to lead with it, but you want to remind them. And emphasize something about, these are strengthened. It's not new. We've always taken your safety and wellness to heart, and customer safety has always been a priority. But we've gone an extra step, right? So you don't want them to think like, we never cleaned before, why are we cleaning now? Never, ever, ever claim you're COVID free. I was at a retail shop this weekend, and I went on their Facebook just to see, were they open, what were they doing, and they were like, all over their Facebook, they were saying, we're a safe place. You don't know you're a safe place. Like, that's the reality. So you want to talk about how you're doing everything you can to ensure their safety, but you can never say you are a safe place. You can never say you're COVID free. Don't worry about communicating too much right now. Like, we don't know that people are going to want to read your entire, in Cedar Point's case, 3,000 to 4,000 page document outlining their safety procedures, right? They just want to know that you're doing what you can to keep the environment clean and employing social distancing, and how you're going to do it. There'll be some that are going to want the details, but a majority want to just have the trust. They want trust that you've got their best interest at heart, and to be creative with that. From a marketing perspective, so much information, because it's changing all the time, and it's not going to be about just flipping on your marketing engine where you left off. That we know for sure. So we've been doing some deep dive marketing webinars with some Zoom chats, and learning a lot about, the emphasis on drive markets, what we need to do to get those drive markets when everybody else in the Midwest is going to be going after the same market. Talking about a phased in marketing strategy, understanding that things are going to change. We need to change with it. and looking at the experiences that are most sought after right now. And Ohio's fortunate. I mean, it's about small town pride, Americana. It's that multi-generational, maxed out. It was growing anyway. Now it's going to be projected to grow even more. So I have links to articles summarizing these discussions we've had, so that you're able to glean some information that we've learned. Everything the Ohio Travel Association has been doing has been coming from a plan, a call for action plan we developed within the first, I think, 2 or 3 weeks of shutdown, that involved not only surveys and in conversations with many of you, but also on research on what's worked elsewhere globally and in the country. And so we kind of use this as our game plan for moving forward. Our current priorities right now are to keep encouraging reopening. Like I said, we're in contact with the governor's office on an almost daily basis, in working with them and identifying maybe some opportunities for clarification. We want to make sure you guys are ready to open, providing any of the information practices we can. We're looking at supporting economic relief. You may hear something this week about a federal issue. So, we were the first hurt and we're the longest hurt. We have over a 51% unemployment rate right now. And we were some of the last opened. So we're going to need some help in the long term. And so we're trying to recommend some programs, some activities, some economic relief for the industry. Understanding the marketing challenges and, of course, communicating with you. So that is it in a nutshell. I just checked. We still don't have that public health order, but I thought what we could do is kind of go over the questions that were proposed earlier. Can the health department distinguish any differences between social distancing and family distancing for the purposes of movement? They haven't clarified that. But what we know is that, look, it is social distancing between units. If they are in a car driving to your attraction, they're walking in as a unit. Keep that unit together, social distance between that unit and the next unit. There's no need to social distance like every human, because so many of them they're traveling together, they're living together. So we'll verify that, but that is our interpretation of this, that it is between the units, because that's how they're traveling. What do guidelines look like for visiting attraction like Ohio Caverns? Okay, my buddies at Ohio Caverns, I've been working with them almost every week. I adore them. So look, you're not going to have your attraction spelled out in every guideline. Ohio Caverns, that's a cultural group. I mean, cultural means outdoor, history, blah, blah, blah. Like, we have to, if we call out every single business, we really run the risk of micromanaging a process that's already really micromanaged. So far as Ohio Caverns, they're operating as a museum, as an entertainment complex. They're following the guidelines that are already created. And they've also, I know our caverns in the state have also been working together and talking to one another, and have talked to me, and they're ready. Like they're most of them are ready to go. There was a question about overnight and day camp options. When will a decision to open these? They're available to open. There are guidelines not only for residential, but also for day camps. And I've linked to the public order that was released saying residential and day camps could open. So those are able to go forward. Another question, when will it be allowed for senior center groups to take a motor coach trip in Ohio? Limits to guests? Are tour operators allowed to make the wearing a mask mandatory? Well, interestingly enough, I just got off the phone. We had a 10 o'clock call with 10 different tour operators from around the country. Look, it's most of the senior centers are closed. I mean, it isn't about necessarily, being allowed. It's the fact that a lot of them are closed. And so if they're not allowed to come out for a congregated meal, they're certainly not allowed to go out, for a trip. So we have had some really interesting discussions. I don't know who asked this question. Feel free to call me. I can tell you about the conversation we had this morning. But we are seeing tours are starting to pick up. They may be a little different. There aren't limits as to how many guests could be on a motor coach. For one thing, that industry is regulated by the federal government because it's interstate, so it's not regulated by a state entity. So the motor coach industry itself is developing, like each business is pretty much developing protocols. Some are limiting to half buses. A lot of them are letting the groups that are booking determine what that capacity would be. So there are a lot of questions about that, but there's a lot of flexibility with it. Are tour operators allowed to make wearing of masks mandatory? Sure, it's your business, right? You do what you do to keep what you think you need to do to keep your employees and others as safe as possible. So, any business is permitted to establish policies related to that. All right, so looking for assistance with banquet center requirements, how many people at tables, food restrictions, blah, blah, blah. All right, so this is a link to the new order. As I told you earlier, we just got this order released, and it does provide more details and opens up the opportunity to have banquet events like this beyond just wedding receptions. Tables are limited to 10, still no more than 300 people. That is the same requirement for the wedding receptions. What is different is that live entertainment is now permitted. That has been okayed in this order. And congregated spaces are allowed as long as you employ the social distancing. So as long as you do all 5 of those things, right, we talked about earlier, and figure out a way to make it happen, then you are permitted to allow dancing. What about implementing programs for groups of guests with appropriate social distancing? Nothing spelled out. Here's the deal. So we run the risk of, again, if we keep asking these smaller questions, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't know, maybe not. So some of it we have to just we're going to have to interpret this and work with your local health department. Like, that is the number one advice I have, is if you are questioning things, work with them, right? Work with them. Let them take a look at your guidelines. Let them give advice. So as far as programs for groups of guests, well, let's consider it. You're allowed to do live entertainment. At these events, you have to keep the social distancing. So I'm assuming that also means that, you should be able to do programs with that social distancing in place. I know some people are being very creative. There is talk of even, I know the state parks, as an example, they're thinking about, mind you, don't take this as verbatim, but they're thinking about, offering programs by reservation. So you could have a program, but hey, it's an even better experience now because you're having this program privately for members of your party. With the ban on mass gatherings still in place, does that mean institutions still need to cancel larger events? Again, we're trying to get clarification on this because it's just not clear. Like, my opinion is they're opening county fairs. Then we need to have some guidelines in place for similar events. We can't treat our businesses differently. If they're offering a similar experience, it goes back to, we have to be given the same opportunity to conduct business as someone else who is open. It may mean you need to submit your plan for a larger event that we're trying to figure out. So that is the hot issue right now. With theater seating, will our opening plan need to include social distancing of a guest in the middle to exit? I have no idea. Like, will it need to include? No, right? I'm guessing, unless once the performance theaters are permitted to open, there are additional guidelines given. I haven't heard anything about this. I mean, it would make sense, but it's I think it's more about the length of time. And if you're seated elbow to elbow, that is a different exposure than if someone's going to the restroom and has to walk in front of you. That would be my guess. And I'm sure if you ask your local health department, I am going to think they might be consistent with that, but I can talk to someone if you're interested in talking about this more. Regarding playgrounds, does this include sports courts, picnic shelters, pavilions? The campgrounds criteria is linked here. Playgrounds, unless the sports courts such as tennis, non-contact sports, are posted, I believe the other things are excluded, and we have heard nothing about picnic shelters and pavilions. Again, but if we're allowing congregated spaces in a banquet hall, would this make sense? Sure, it would make sense. So we'll try to get clarification on that one. All right, Kelly, what other questions do we have?
Okay, so there's a question that came in earlier, the earlier part of the presentation. What category would a trolley fall under, and do we know any directives given for tours of that type?
There are no directives as far as tours of that type. What I would advise is kind of look at maybe look at guidelines that are in place for transit companies. So I don't know what city you're in, but in Columbus, CODA, what are the different transit companies? What are the protocols they have into place? And, see if you can come up with something similar to that. Because you are a different, you're not going to be called out specifically, and that's okay. Because that also means that, there's not a state mandate that says, yes, no, you may not open. What I would do, make sure your plan is consistent with the local transit companies, right? And then go to your local health department and say, look, here's what we've got. Here's what we're doing. This is open. This is open. This is open. We just want your blessing and, advice on how to proceed. So in your situation, I would go to the local health department to get the A-OK. And understand this has happened like numerous times for other entities that haven't been called out specifically, like zip lines. The reason zip lines got approved was because they went to a local health department and, said, hey, this is what we're going to do. Do you agree? Anything you would do differently? Okay, will you let us, open? We're not called out by the governor saying we're not allowed to open. So therefore, the health department was able to say, sure, you can open.
Okay, thank you. We had another one come in the later half of the presentation. They mentioned that they did miss the first half. They were on an Ohio Museums Association webinar yesterday where they stated museums weren't in the travel tourism group, but are in the arts and culture group now. Also, a public health order would not be issued for that group. Any info or comments on this?
Well, that's interesting because my contact with the governor's office is saying completely different. So, it's very different. And the governor specifically had said, that museums were included in the category. So I don't know where that's coming from. Not what we've been told, but again, God knows there's a lot of like conflicting information out there. Hold on, I'm looking it up. Is there another one while I look this up?
There is not. No.
Okay, so on the governor's website, specifically, aquariums, zoos, museums, and art galleries are permitted to reopen June 10. June 10. And I will, I am going to text my contact, the governor's office. So whoever was on that, if you wouldn't mind, like calling or emailing me afterwards, I will get clarification straight from his office on that. But museums are put right into it that they're permitted to open, and they're permitted to open June 10. It was identified by the governor, and I was told this morning from his office when I asked, do you know if a new order is anticipated today based on the entertainment offerings tomorrow? I was told not sure exactly what the time frame is, but I'll let you know as soon as I know.
So that person that just submitted that question, Melinda, sent me their, I'll pass that over to you.
Perfect. I'll get in touch with you.
And so far, those are all the questions that have come in.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm gonna we will end the call. I have my email there. Also, let me give you my phone number because I know this is an unusual time. If you have any questions, give me a shout. 419-366-4391. And I am happy to talk to anyone who may have some specific questions. And we just really appreciate all the great questions you guys sent. And I should have said earlier, sometimes questions just mean more questions. But it gives us a guidance on what kind of answers we need to find for you. And so that's why we will be sending out information as soon as we can. Thanks.